Good evening, Gills fans. Welcome back to another episode of Gills in the Blood TV. It is Wednesday night, which of course means it is a match preview showtime, and it is a big weekend for all of the clubs in Sky Bet League 2. It is, of course, Easter weekend, where, as our manager Stephen Clements has recently said, it will sort out the runners and riders in the hunt for promotion. And of course, we take on Lee Bell's promotion hunting Crewe Alexandra. And I'm pleased to say, to help me find out about the Alex is Crewe fan Joe Cosby. I'll put his details for Twitter in the description at the bottom of the video. So first of all, welcome, Joe. Appreciate your time. And yeah, it looks like it's going to be a big game.
Yeah, definitely. We've been hunting around sort of the promotion places and dropped back into the playoff pitch now, which you know yourselves are trying to get into. So yeah, it's going to be one of those 6-pointers, I think.
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah, I think for weeks I've been using the phrase must not lose, but as the games tick down, I think a lot of teams are now, I think, to say must win rather than must not lose. Unless, obviously, I suppose for you now, it probably looks more like the playoffs than the top three. Would that be fair to say? A couple of dodgy results in recent weeks.
Yeah, last 6 games or so, we've dropped some points that we should have been picking up. We're 5 points off the autos now. And I think we've dropped to only 6 points safety within the playoffs. So this is probably now one of our must-not-lose games. If we come to you guys, if we're able to nick a couple of points off you, and in terms of it being a draw, for example, I think we'd be quite happy with that. It just stops kind of those playoff chasers catching us up more than anything is what we're trying to look at now.
That's it, yeah. And let's have a look at recent form because it's always a good place to look. So the last 6 for Alex has been 7 points from 18, I think it is. There was a win, very impressive at Notts County. I said very impressive win about Gills in February at Notts County, and since then, week by week, those wins look less and less impressive as Notts County get worse and worse. But it's still a good win in the grand scheme of things. There was then that 5-goal thriller that you unfortunately came out on the wrong side of at home to Morecambe. Defeat at Crewe was probably disappointing. Narrow win against Sutton, who were fighting for their lives. And the last 2 have bought just a solitary point. That's been a defeat at Stadium MK and a 1-1 draw against fellow playoff hopefuls Wimbledon. So currently sit 5th with 65 points from 39 fixtures. The Gills, I will quickly run down their games. Salford away 2-0, Barrow away lost 2-0, Tranmere at home a 1-1 draw, Wimbledon away very poor performance, lost by 2-0, Grimsby at home 1-1 draw, and then back to winning ways most recently with that thrilling come from behind victory at Morecambe by 3-2, and we currently sit 8th with 59 points from 40 games, so all to play for. Just looking at recent form there, Joe, 3 defeats in the last 5 for the Alex must be concerning considering your previous 3 defeats took 13 fixtures, and it's the worst possible time to be having a bit of a wobble, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. We've thrown points away in games that realistically we should have been getting something from. So the Morecambe game is a good example. Took a decent lead and then ended up losing. We played poorly away at Doncaster and then had an absolute horror show in the first half against MK Dons. And again, it's those sorts of games where you really need to be picking up the points if you want to stay in that autos race. We haven't done that, and we deserve to have kind of fallen off that chase, unfortunately. That said, I think if you'd given any Crewe fan the position that we're in at the start of the season, they'd have snatched your hand off for it. Most pundits were putting us down sort of 19th, 20th place. So to be anywhere near the contention for autos and playoffs is a good season for us.
Yeah, I was just having a look where I put you. You said experts and pundits. I'm not going to include myself in that umbrella, but I did a season preview video. 18th, yeah. I just thought, again, it was we'd seen, because we'd come down together, hadn't we? And I think you were the highest of the teams that come out of League 1 2 seasons ago and finished 13th. It was a poor season for any club that had dropped out of League 1. But let's talk about Lee Bell then, because regardless of the current issues, 3 defeats in 5, he's done a brilliant job. He was appointed, December 2022 now, so he's been there sort of 16 months. It's been a phenomenal turnaround. I know he was coming into a club that was struggling in League 2, similar to us when he took the job, but he done well to steer you away from danger up to 13th in 22-23, and then I can see when you speak about him about this season, you can see in your eyes that you just think it's been an incredible job that he is doing. And has it exceeded expectations, or?
Yeah, 100%. Lee Bell's been around the club for a long time. He had 2 spells with us as a player. He came through our academy, left the club played for another couple of local teams, Britain Albion and Macclesfield, for example, came back into the club and he's worked his way up from being the under-18s coach through the under-21s assistant manager to then taking over the reins as manager himself. It's taken a little bit of time to try and get things up and running, but the recruitment last summer was really key. We brought in some really good players. I think have helped us. Mickey Demetrio, for example, has been an absolute godsend to us at both ends of the pitch. He's contributed goals and he's stopped them. The thing about Lee Bell, he's a local lad. He's a Crewe Alex fan. He's really built a close-knit group of players who want to play for each other. He's a young manager himself. He's got a lot of energy and enthusiasm. That really comes through to the players on the pitch as well. He's built a really good squad. And although we've had some injuries that kind of have knocked us for six at crucial times, he's managed to kind of find the right youth players or bring in new loan players to actually fill those gaps. He's had a whirlwind first 16 months and done really, really well in the role.
You say found the correct youth players, and I think that's probably a phrase, youth, a word that's synonymous with Crewe Alexandra, and that's not just in recent times. That goes back to probably the 80s, the 90s. I'm thinking off the top of my head, Danny Murphy, David Platt. There's been others. Even that team that was in League One about 3 seasons ago, where you got stripped bare, didn't you, at the end of that season? Like Perry and G, them types of players all went to the Championship or top end of League One. It's something that Crewe's just associated with, isn't it? Just this ridiculous, continuous conveyor belt of players that are going to go and step up into the first team. And it's a brilliant model to be able to run a club at this level, because we all know the nature of the beast is that eventually, if a Gillingham or a Crewe has a good player, they're going to get picked up by bigger people up and down the food chain, aren't they? That's the thing.
Yeah, it's been one of the key issues that we've had at Crewe for the last few years, is that we kind of go in these cycles where we'll develop a good crop of players, and unfortunately they all seem to get fantastic at the same time when they're all sold on. So as you say, we had the promotion team, and then within 6-12 months we've lost half of that squad to Championship and League One clubs. We've had similar, even in January we lost Conor O'Riordan, one of our key defenders, come through the academy, played 50 games for us, and then we've lost him for £500,000 due to a release clause. And unfortunately, again, it's those kind of things that do keep coming up. But the model continues to work. And say we'll bring players in, we'll get the best out of them, we'll sell them on to keep funding that next generation. And a club at our level needs that kind of income stream. Whether it quite matches up with the costs of the academy now that income fees are sort of stagnating at lower levels or not, there's a debate to be had. If you look at this season, we've managed to bring in crucial players like Mats Holacek and Lewis Billington at really important times, who have come in, done the job for us, and are going to go on and have sort of bright careers in the game, and hopefully continue to support that next crop of players coming through, and get a fee when the time comes to keep the business model working.
Absolutely. And like you say, when you've got someone like Lee Bell, who's been at various roles within the club before waking his way up to be promoted to first team manager, obviously he knows the club, he knows the system, he knows the process, he knows them players that are coming through, which ones are going to be ready and at which time. So it's all very, very sort of, it's just perfect symmetry, isn't it? I suppose in how it works. Like you say, the downside is when you get a good bunch that all get good together, they all leave together, which is the problem. But I suppose you wouldn't have it any other way, because it's what keeps the football club going, isn't it?
Yeah, it's the life of a Crewe Alex fan, I think, is you know that you get to support these local lads coming through, do really well, and go on to have sort of glistening careers. Whether like Dean Ashton, there've been called up in the squads in recent years, Ashley Westwood, who's played in the Premier League, I mean, more recently, we've not been able to get the players to the Premier League, but they have been moving up to League One and Championship clubs. I mentioned Conor O'Riordan. Recently, we've re-signed Charlie Kirk. He moved on. He's had a very good promotion year with us. The time was right for him to move on. It's not worked out for him at Charlton. I think he went on loan to Burton as well. It's not quite worked out. It's come back to us, and it's just a case of finding those players that are talented and can add something to that team. And if you can produce them yourselves as homegrown players, you're saving a ton of wages. You're saving we can't afford transfer fees with our club model. We only get sort of 4,000 home attendance, So we can't go out and buy players. It's more competitive in non-league football now. So we've got to produce our own if we want to try and get any success.
And it's been working for donkey's years. So the old adage is, if it's not broken, don't fix it. We mentioned the 3 losses in the last 5, which is concerning. Another thing that I noticed is the goals have just dried up a little bit in recent times. I think you've scored. So if you look at your last 6, you scored 3 in the last 4, if you break that down, whereas it was 5 in the 2 previous to that. So is that a bit of a concern? I'm just looking at Elliot Nevitt, obviously, who's your top scorer. He's still scoring fairly regularly, so that's not a problem. So is it a cause for concern, or is it just a blip and just one of them spells that you're going through, and it just sort of coincides with the recent dip in form overall?
It's a bit of a cause for concern. Unfortunately, we've had like injuries to key players throughout the season. We lost. We signed Jack Powell last summer from Crawley. He was going to be our key set piece taker. He was our engine in midfield, our creative force. And he did I think it was his ACL back in October, November time. He's out for the season. And he's like one of your crucial players. We've had recurring injuries, players like Joel Taberner that have created goals, and he's kind of been a few weeks in, a few weeks out, a few weeks in. Key players, like we've got Chris Long coming back now after another injury layoff. He's had injuries throughout his career with us. He's coming back in, and at the same time he comes back in, we've lost Courtney Baker-Richardson with a shoulder injury, and another striker for us. So it's been really a case of square pegs in round holes at times for us, and it's not through a lack of skill in front of goal as such as creating those opportunities in the first place. We've had to. One player that's kind of been the focus in the last week is Rio Adebisi, for example. He's our main left wing back. Fantastic player, marauding down the left, come on leaps and bounds this season. Got a wonderful left foot on him to be able to cross the ball. But then because of changes at the back, he's ended up at right back instead, which means he's been cutting back inside on his left foot, not had the space to create those same crosses. Not got
well, it did him no harm last Saturday. There's names I've written down. So, and like you say, Courtney Baker-Richardson, 9 goals, injured, in and out of the side. Chris Long, 9 goals, in and out of the side due to injury. It's frustrating. Then I suppose it puts more pressure on Nevitt, because you're thinking if he gets injured, then we really are up the proverbial creek without a paddle and that type of thing. But I've written down it's usually the forwards, and understandably so, that get all the credit. They get the highlights, the headlines, because they're the ones that ultimately score the goals to earn you the points, which hopefully get you into those coveted promotion places or worse playoff places. But I have written down just how good is Rio Adebisi, purely because I was listening to the Not the Top 20 pod Monday, and they said, and I think I've quoted this correctly, potentially the best fullback in the division at the moment. Is he that good?
He's come on leaps and bounds this season, no doubt about it. I think he was out of contract last year, and I think if he'd have turned down that contract extension, no Crewe fans would have really been fussed about him. He kind of come into he's not a young player anymore. He's sort of 23, somewhere around there. And he just wasn't really breaking through as we need players to. Again, talking about the business model of selling players on or getting the best out of them. And effectively, he was possibly blocking that next player coming through if we kept him on. He has stayed with us, and he's been a revelation. He's very reminiscent performances of Harry Pickering, who we sold to Blackburn a few years ago, and at the time was one of the best young left backs outside the Premier League. And yeah, he's done very well. There is work to do on his defensive game. He's not the best at that side of things, but he's got a real engine on him. He can get up and down. He's becoming a real professional as well. It's not just this sort of that young player immaturity anymore. There's actually he's understanding when to just boot it clear, when to put his body in the way, how to turn out of trouble, that kind of thing. And he's added a couple of goals to his game as well. He scored against Wimbledon last week. And yeah, so he's somebody that we weren't expecting to be such a key player for us this season. But long may it continue.
Oh yeah, hopefully. For your point of view, I hope he's rubbish on Friday, of course. But then after that, he can be brilliant unless we meet in the playoffs. But yeah, just looking at his heat map for this season's phenomenal. Either side, like you say, and 4 goals, 7 assists in the league, 13 big chances created this season from fullback. Just over 1 key pass per game, 73% passing accuracy is good as well. That's it. And then obviously the defensive side, which I'm from an era where defenders were defenders first and foremost. I appreciate that it's changed these days, but yeah, 9 clean sheets in the league, which I don't think is too far off sort of the top 6 or 7 in the country in terms of sides. 1.8 tackles per game, 3.9 ball recoveries per game. So he does both sides of the game very well, which is what you want.
Yeah, definitely. It's one of those players. When we switch between a back 4 and a back 5 from time to time, I think he's more suited to the back 5, where he's got that sort of cover behind him. But he's equally adept at both. And yeah, as you say, he's played left and right side for us. He can do a bit of everything, to be honest. He's even filled in midfield when we've needed him to. So yeah, it's nice to see those sorts of players kind of continuing to progress, even though they've gone past the age where normally we'd expect them to have a move potentially. He's still kind of continuing to do well for us, and yeah, certainly got a career at a high level if he continues this sort of level of performances.
But do you think, and this is just something I'm just thinking off the top of my head now, though, mate, is do you think 23 is probably younger now than it was a few years ago because players are so fit because of the nutritional side of the game and the fitness and everything that they can do and all the analytics? Do you think 23 is probably almost like as if he was, say, if you went back a decade, it'd be like he's 19?
Yeah, it's interesting seeing, again, with our business model, we're seeing more players stay longer in their careers. So we're trying to get these deals where they stay up until the 24 years old because of the rules around free transfers for youngsters. I think, yeah, it's this kind of thing. Adebisi only came into the squad really at the age of sort of 19 or 20 as a regular first team player, whereas traditionally we're bringing through players who are in their first year of professional contracts and we're starting for us. Those players are now not breaking through until they're around 20 years old, and we've actually seen at Crewe, for example, a lot of our under 21s are now playing in first team football because it's the age group and the way that they've changed. Our under 21s playing first team, our under 18s are playing under 21s, and so on. But yeah, it's good to see that there is still that kind of ethos, even though the footballing environment and sales and things have dried up slightly. We're still bringing those young players through, and they continue to have careers in the professional game.
Absolutely. I also meant just from the fact that players play longer now. So you can give them more time to develop. Whereas before you probably thought at 19, 20, they've probably got to be sold on if we're going to make money. Whereas now, because players used to play till they was probably 31, 32, and then you'd say, oh, they're past their prime. Now, people are still, I mean, I know it's a different level, but you only got to look at people like Messi and Ronaldo that are still winning World Cups and scoring goals at 36, 37 and 38. So I think, what I mean is that probably helps clubs that rely on being able to sell good players because you haven't got to sell them at 19, 20. You can let them develop for another 2 or 3 years and then you're still going to get good value because the buying club knows that they'll have them until they're potentially 34, 35 and they're still not diminishing in terms of performance levels.
We've seen it with the likes of Charlie Kirk coming back to Crewe, for example. He's 26 or 27 now, and yet most Crewe fans will still consider him a young player. He's got 200 games under his belt for varying clubs now at League 1 and League 2 level. But you look at him, and again, he is still learning the game to some extent. He's still getting used to. He's a very sort of fair weather player. If it's a nice green pitch and the weather's sunny and 20 degrees, he's absolutely fine bombing down the left wing. Stick him on a cold, as the saying goes, cold, wet, rainy night on a Tuesday night in Stoke, and he'd struggle with that sort of game. So, unfortunately, I'm not sure that Gillingham's going to be the best sort of ground for him. But it's that kind of thing of just making sure that players are staying with the clubs as long as possible so that they can develop, and making sure that the move is right for them so they don't end up in Kirk's situation, for example, where they've moved up and then come back down to our level quite quickly, making sure that actually the players, for their own development, move at the right time and can continue to perform at the high level that they've been sold to.
Absolutely. But I suppose the caveat to that is the fact that these players know that they've been so well looked after that if it doesn't work and they've got to drop back down a couple of levels, then chances are you get first refusal because you were the ones that developed them in the first place.
Yeah, 100%. There's a lot being said around the way that we've signed players recently. We can't pay big wages for professionals, but what we can do is sell the club to them. We're in quite a nice location in the northwest. We've got lots of like leafy villages and towns and stuff around us that players want to kind of raise their families in. And we're very sort of a family-focused club. We do a lot of work with the players and making sure that things meet their needs as well as their financial situation. So yeah, it's been an interesting selling point, and there's been a lot of talk around recruitment for us around making sure that the players we're bringing in are the right fit for the group so that we don't disrupt anything. We've got the managers talked about having presentations for players around local schools. We've got a good relationship with local estate agents and things so the players settle into the area well. We can't pay big wages, but we can make sure that their time with us as a club, they get the coaching and development that allows them to progress as a professional, and that their family is well looked after as well while they're here.
That's it. As long as they feel wanted, that's the biggest selling point I think there is, regardless of wage. I know everyone has to be paid. I get that entirely, but yeah, it's at our level. There has to be different ways to sell football clubs, and you've been doing it very well for the last few years. And you also have, I suppose, where you are, you've got good catchment areas for players that are falling out of academies at higher levels. They can come to you, and it's not too far. It's not much of a move, and they get to play regular football.
Yeah, we're in a good location. I say anything from the Midlands and the Northwest, we tend to pick up those players that might not have made it with academies at a higher level. We've got good relationships with a few different clubs around the country now. So we've had a couple of loanees in from Brighton. We've got a couple at the moment, Aaron Rowe and Josh Osterfield in from Huddersfield, for example. So yeah, it's about giving other clubs the opportunities. I think other clubs can see that Crewe is still very much a coaching club, and that if they send their young players to us, they will develop. We can teach them that technical side of the game, give them that opportunity in lower league football where they kind of build their strength and stamina as well. So it continues to be a good model for us, and we can't always pay the high wages, but we can definitely develop players.
Absolutely. Right. Obviously, Friday is the most immediate thing. I said Friday. I've been saying Saturday all week, so I've done well there. I've noticed that Gills have done their press conference today, a day earlier than normal. I've just had a look. Crewe have not put anything out yet. So in terms of injuries, suspensions, you've mentioned a couple, but in terms of an 11 come 3 o'clock Friday afternoon, I'm guessing there's not going to be too many changes, are there? Lee Bell's going to trust these players that have done well over the first 39 games of the season. So do we expect it to probably be the same 11 as Wimbledon last Saturday, or as close to it?
I expect it will be along the lines of the same team. Zach Williams, one of our younger defenders, went off with an injury in the first half and had to switch the system slightly.
Okay.
There's been no news on whether he's fit to play or not, but I'd expect us to be playing a 4-3-3 system, the same as we kind of we moved to around half time last week. We've got Tom Booth in goal, young goalkeeper that's come through the academy, played quite a lot of this season. Lost his place a couple of months ago due to a punctured lung, but has come back in and been back in good form. But then, the defence has been fairly settled throughout, whether we've been playing 4 or 5 at the back. It's kind of built around Mickey Demetrio, summer signing from Newport, and how he's still playing at this level, I've got absolutely no idea. The fact that he's never really played above lower league football, he's been an absolute godsend to us. He's a real leader on and off the pitch. So he's now got the likes of Rio Adebisi alongside him at left back. Expect Ed Turns will play centre half, who's on loan from, I think it's Brighton as well at the moment. And then Ryan Cooney at right back, likely to start. 3-man midfield is likely to be Josh Osterfield, Connor Thomas, and Lewis Lee. And then a strike force, I'd expect it'd be Shiloh Tracy, Elliot Nevitt, and Charlie Kirk up front. Maybe Aaron Rowe coming in as well. He's been sort of knocking around the squad for a while. But yeah, I wouldn't expect too many changes.
No, like you say, why would there be? He's done a great job, and they've done a great job for him, and he's not going to stop trusting them now just because of a little bit of wobble over the last month or so. In terms of the Gills, we know that Dom Jeffries is not going to be fit for another couple of weeks. He's been missing long term with a torn thigh. Jorge Hurtado still recovering from a knee problem, so it's up to parent club Watford whether we're allowed to see him at the end of the season if he does get himself fit. And there's the only other doubt for us is Johnny Williams, who unfortunately had to come off with a knock against Morecambe last Saturday. I think Stephen Clements has confirmed it's a groin issue, so they're going to give him as much time as possible. So that looks like it's going to be a fitness test either Thursday or Friday morning. But for me, again, similar to yourself, mate, if it's not broke, don't fix it. We won the game last week, so if Johnny Williams is fit, I'd go with an unchanged 11. So that would be Glenn Morris in goal, a back 4 of Romeo Hutton, Max Emas, Shadogi and Max Clark. And then it would be Robbie McKenzie and Timmy Dieng sitting in front. Connor Mahoney, George Lapsley and Williams as a 3 supporting Ollie Hawkins. Of course, if Johnny Williams doesn't make it, And I'd personally bring in Jaden Clark and just keep the system, because I think we've got to be a little bit braver now. We've got to go with a back four rather than a back five, which served us so well for a period of time. But yeah, again, it looks like it's going to be two very similar systems. And I think it'd be interesting to see how the style of play contrasts, because I think we'll probably be a bit more direct than you when we have to be, whereas I think you're just going to get it down and just going to keep passing it and go from there. Final question, mate, before I let you go. I was just looking at previous fixtures, and we actually hold a bit of a curse, I suppose is the right word, overview, specifically at the Priestfield. I've just had a look. It makes pretty reading for Gills fans. March 2016, 3-0 to Gills. January 21, 4-1 to the Gills. I think we had a helping hand from a certain Omar Beckles that night, I think it might have been. February 22, a narrow 1-0 win. I think that might have been Neil Harris's first game in charge. And then March 23, which was last season, we beat you 2-1. Yeah, so last 4 games at the Priestfield, it's an aggregate of 10-2 in Gills' favour. So if Crewe Turner's over now, Gills fans, then you can come and blame me for saying all that. Final question, mate, before I let you go. Joe, score prediction, please.
More than anything, a point is the necessity. Going to go for a 1-1 draw.
It's fair enough. Which, like you say, if you don't get beat, it means we don't get closer to you, and the pressure doesn't build, and it's another game ticked off, and you'd still have a game in hand. I'm going to be positive for my team, and I think we're going to just nick it based on the fact that we had a good win last week, and our home record against you in recent seasons is very good. So I'm going to say 2-1 to the Gills, and I'm going to back Connor Mahoney and George Lapsley to score the goals. Gills fans, Alex fans, if you're still watching at this point, then thank you very much. I really do appreciate it. Please consider hitting that subscribe button. Please go and whack that like button. As I've already said, go and follow Joe on Twitter so you can follow him and get everything that's a Crewe Alex perspective over the weekend. He is going to be watching the game. And yeah, thank you, mate. First and foremost, it's been a real pleasure listening to you in terms of what's going to be happening on Friday, and also the club as a whole, because I think it's a club that a lot of other clubs up and down the country could certainly learn from in how they do things. So thank you, mate. Really appreciate your time.
Yeah, no problem at all.
Right, Gills fans, we will be back Friday for Matchday Live, myself and Ava and whoever else is about. So come over and give us your score predictions before the game, and then hopefully be joined on Saturday or Sunday by a Crewe fan to look back on what is hopefully a positive performance and result for the Gills. But until then, enjoy the rest of your week, and up the Gills.